She was already in my backyard when I noticed the light flicker inside my shed. I stepped outside, and there she was, Karen, standing by the open door with a heavy extension cord running from my outlet straight toward her house. She didn't even look guilty. "This is HOA property," she said flatly, as if my shed somehow belonged to her. I pointed at the cord. "That's my power. Unplug it." She smirked, like she'd rehearsed this moment. "You're not allowed to have that outlet. I'm just making sure it's being used for the community." Before I could argue, she yanked her phone out and started recording me. "Harassing a neighbor on HOA land," she announced loudly, aiming the camera like it was a weapon. I knew better than to yell, but my jaw clenched. The cord kept snaking across the grass into her backyard, disappearing into her side door. Something about the way her air conditioner had been running non-stop lately made my stomach twist. She'd been stealing my power for days, maybe weeks. Then, just as I reached for the plug, Karen took 2 steps forward and snapped, "If you touch that, I'm calling the police." She said it with the same confidence as someone holding a winning lottery ticket. But before I could even decide what to do next, there was a faint pop in the distance, followed by the smell of burning plastic drifting through the air. Karen froze, her eyes flicking toward her house, where thin white smoke had started curling from an upstairs window. She dropped the phone. "Oh my God, what's happening?" I didn't move. I just stared at her, waiting for her to realize that her little theft had just turned into something far bigger than she'd bargained for, and I wasn't planning on helping her, not yet. Karen spun around and sprinted toward her house, screaming for her son to check the breaker box. The extension cord dragged behind her like a live snake, still plugged into my outlet. I followed slowly, not because I wanted to help her, but because I wanted to see exactly what was going on. Her front door was wide open, and from where I stood on the porch, I could see the chaos inside. Sparks snapping near the kitchen wall, lights flickering like a haunted house, and the faint hum of something overloading. Her son, maybe 18, was panicking, yanking plugs from the wall. "You overloaded it," I said calmly, leaning in the doorway. She whipped around, eyes blazing. "You did this! You set me up!" I let out a short laugh. "Karen, you literally stole my power. If you fried your house, that's on you." Before she could answer, the smoke alarm shrieked. That's when a loud bang shook the living room, followed by the sound of shattering glass from upstairs. Karen's face drained of color. She bolted outside to the street, screaming for someone to call the fire department. 2 neighbors came running over, phones already out, not to help, but to record. I could hear one of them whisper, "She's been stealing his electricity for months." The other replied, "Guess karma's faster than the fire truck." Karen turned to me, her voice trembling but still dripping with that same fake authority. "You better not tell them about this. HOA will back me up." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Funny thing, Karen, the HOA doesn't know I'm the one who owns the land they're built on." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The fire truck's siren was already echoing down the street, and in that moment I realized this wasn't just about stolen electricity anymore. This was about to become a very public humiliation. The fire truck screeched to a halt right in front of her lawn, and firefighters jumped out, hauling hoses toward the side of her house. Karen instantly switched into performance mode, waving, her arms yelling about faulty wiring and dangerous neighbors. One of the firefighters brushed past me, but I caught him glancing at the extension cord still running from my shed. I didn't have to say a word. His eyes followed it straight to Karen's wall outlet, and his brow furrowed. "Ma'am, why is this cord plugged into your house from across the property line?" Karen stuttered. It's a temporary arrangement. HOA policy allows..." He cut her off. "That's theft of service. You could have burned down half the block." A small crowd had gathered now, neighbors holding coffee mugs, kids recording on their phones. One of them shouted, "She's been stealing from him for months, we told you." Another chimed in, "Didn't she fine you for having Christmas lights last year?" Karen's face flushed deep red, but she tried to stand tall. "He's lying! All of them are lying! He doesn't even own this property!" That was my cue. I pulled a folded document from my back pocket, the one I'd been holding onto for a situation exactly like this. "Actually, Karen," I said, my voice just loud enough for the crowd to hear, "this entire street sits on land I inherited from my grandfather, including your house." The murmurs from the crowd were immediate. Karen froze, her eyes darting from me to the paper in my hand. For the first time, I saw actual fear in her expression. A firefighter stepped back from her door, shaking his head. "We've shut down your power for safety. You'll need an inspector before you can turn it back on." And just like that, her air conditioner, her lights, her fake sense of control, everything went dark. Karen stood in the middle of her lawn, surrounded by neighbors who were no longer pretending to be on her side. Her son muttered something about staying at a motel, but she hissed at him to shut up and go inside, forgetting there was no power, no AC, and smoke still lingering in the air. I stayed quiet, letting the scene breathe, because I knew the real blow was about to land. The fire captain walked over to me. "We'll be filing a report on this, and it looks like a case for law enforcement, too." He gave Karen a pointed look. "Stealing utilities isn't just against HOA rules. It's a crime." Karen's composure cracked. No, this is all a misunderstanding. The HOA will handle it. They? I interrupted, stepping forward. "Karen, there is no HOA. Not legally, not on paper. The original HOA was dissolved 10 years ago. You've been running around making up rules and bullying people, with an authority you don't have." Gasps rolled through the crowd like a wave. One neighbor whispered, "I knew it," while another muttered, "She fined me for a basketball hoop." Karen tried to laugh it off, but her voice shook. "You can't prove that." I unfolded another sheet of paper, a certified county record. "Already did. And this? This is going to the real authorities." Her eyes narrowed, but before she could open her mouth, 2 police cruisers rolled up. An officer stepped out, scanning the scene. The fire captain walked over and pointed directly at the bright orange extension cord still lying in the grass. Karen looked at me, pure panic now replacing arrogance. "You wouldn't." I smiled just enough for her to notice. "Karen, I fought for this country so people like you couldn't steal from your neighbors. You bet I would." And in that instant, I knew the next few minutes were going to be the sweetest payback I'd ever see. The officers approached slowly, taking in the cord, the scorch marks on Karen's siding, and the growing crowd of witnesses. One of them, a tall guy with mirrored sunglasses, asked in a steady voice, "Who's the property owner here?" Karen pointed at me instantly. "He is! Arrest him! He sabotaged my house!" The officer's gaze shifted to me, calm but skeptical. "Sir?" I handed him the stack of documents I'd been carrying. "These show ownership of the land, proof she's been tapping into my power, and witness statements from neighbors. You'll notice the timestamps on my security footage match the overload that caused the fire hazard." Karen's jaw dropped. "Security footage?" "Oh, yes," I said, letting the words linger. "Multiple angles. You didn't think I'd keep my shed unlocked without cameras, did you?" The shorter officer stepped away to talk with a few neighbors, jotting notes as they eagerly recounted her history. Fake HOA fines, threats to call animal control on harmless pets, and even one story about her trying to tow a teenager's car for parking in her shadow. When he came back, he looked at his partner and gave a small nod. The taller officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, You're being detained for questioning regarding theft of utilities and possible fraud. Karen's voice went high and desperate. Fraud! I'm the president of the HOA! The officer didn't even blink. Ma'am, we've confirmed there's no registered HOA for this neighborhood. That makes your fines and enforcement criminal impersonation. The crowd erupted into low murmurs, some people openly grinning. Karen's son muttered, Mom, just stop! But she yanked her arm away from him, glaring at me like this was somehow still my fault. As they placed the cuffs on her, she hissed, You think this is over? I leaned in, keeping my voice low enough for only her to hear. Karen, the moment you stole from me, it was already over. The officer guided her toward the cruiser, and I couldn't help but notice the way every neighbor's phone was out, capturing the walk of shame she'd never lived down. Karen was shoved gently into the back of the cruiser, the metal door slamming shut with a sound that seemed to echo down the whole street. The crowd lingered, whispering and filming like they were watching the season finale of a drama they'd all been unwilling extras in. One of the officers stayed behind to take my official statement. You'll probably need to come down to the station tomorrow, he said, scribbling on his clipboard. We'll also be getting that footage you mentioned. Already emailed to your department, I replied, my tone casual. Time stamped, high resolution, and backed up in 3 places.